Thank you very much for being with us. The first women have been named by Donald Trump in his new administration. Nikki Haley is the latest name revealed by the president-elect. She's the governor at the moment of South Carolina, seen as a rising star of the Republican Party. She's been appointed as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She has no international experience as such, and she's been thus far rather vocal in her criticism of Donald Trump, though she says that she actually voted for him in the primary. The new education secretary will be Betsy DeVos. The DeVos family have a long link to the Republican Party, and they have been regular financial donors to it. So DeVos and Haley, the first women to be named in Trump's lineup. Now, there is confusion around Ben Carson. Ben Carson, of course, was one of the candidates for the presidential nomination, dropping out and then giving his backing to Trump. It's been reported in the Wall Street Journal that he's been named as the Urban Development Secretary, but this has been denied by Carson's people. They say nothing's been offered, no decision has been made. We will try to get the full clarification on that one. So the relationship between Trump and the media is already looking rather strained. His off-the-record meeting with television executives saw the president-elect berate, among others, the head of NBC News over choices of photographs of him that they use in their news stories. Not flattering enough, he said. Trump has been more active on social media and on YouTube since his election, avoiding any news conferences where he'd face questions from journalists. This, of course, until the New York Times took a stand and insisted that their meeting with Trump be on the record. The interview that resulted revealed Trump is already considering more U-turns on his campaign promises.
Faced with the editorial staff of the New York Times, Donald Trump's tone appeared to soften on many of his campaign promises. The president-elect had previously promised to abandon the Paris Agreement on carbon emissions, but to reporters of what he's repeatedly referred to as the failing New York Times, he conceded his mind could be changed.
I have an open mind to it. We're going to look very carefully. It's one issue that's interesting because there are few things where there's more division than climate change.
Then came concerns over conflicts of interest arising from his real estate company. While acknowledging this, he maintains that passing on the business to his children, in spite of ethics lawyers' disagreement, should be sufficient to protect him from accusations.
The president can't have a conflict of interest, but if it were up to some people, I would never ever see my daughter Ivanka again.
Candidate Trump was also a staunch advocate of torture. President-elect Trump isn't so sure. Retired General James Mattis, who is being considered for defense secretary, told him interrogation techniques such as waterboarding are not useful and that more can be achieved by rewarding a suspect's cooperation. On foreign policy, the future resident of the White House struck an optimistic note on the Israelo-Palestinian conflict. He considers that his son-in-law and political advisor Jared Kushner could be the man of the situation.
I would love to be able to be the one that made peace with Israel and the Palestinians. I've had a lot of great Israeli business people tell me, you can't do that, it's impossible. I disagree. I think you can make peace.
Donald Trump also said he wasn't keen on prosecuting Hillary Clinton over her use of a private email server, and disavowed a group of white nationalists who held a conference in Washington, D.C. the previous weekend. With this interview, Trump assured the public of one thing, that his positions on any given topic can change at any time. He even called the New York Times a great American jewel.
Shall Pellegrin's report. You get the picture then. These U-turns making some of us feel rather dizzy. Let's bring in Ian Reifowitz, Professor of Historical Studies at the University of New York. Ian, thanks for being with us. This interview with the New York Times, for you, what does it reveal?
Well, I think it reveals that Mr. Trump will apparently base his positions on whoever the most recent advisor is that he spoke to before he speaks on a matter. Apparently, his meeting with General Mattis on torture was something that that strongly influenced him. I mean, it makes you wonder why he didn't speak to anybody about torture, about torture before he announced on the campaign trail that he wanted to reinstate it, if it was so easy for one general advising him to get him to change his mind. My suspicion is that Mr. Trump is not especially committed to any particular position. He is simply about Trump. We've seen him over the years go from being pro-abortion rights to opposed to abortion rights. We've seen him call, not that many years ago, for increasing taxes on the wealthiest Americans, to putting out a tax plan that would cut them by such a degree that it would make what George W. Bush did 15 years ago look like small potatoes. Trump is about action. Trump is about entertainment. And like I said, I think the positions really don't reflect a lot of depth.
There could be many Trumps, couldn't there? I can identify two, the one in the campaign and the one now in the transition to power. But how do you think his supporters will take all these U-turns that are emerging?
Well, it's a great question. The one thing we've seen his supporters react very strongly to is the announcement that you discussed that he will not be locking up Hillary Clinton. We've already seen some responses on Twitter and social media that from people who are very angry about this. And you have to remember that on the campaign trail, he said he would essentially that he would it's a prosecutor. He would bring criminal charges. Not that he, as president, has the authority to do that. That's irrelevant. But you've got people who are already talking about this as a betrayal. If he doesn't go to his really go-to policy, which is immigration, if he doesn't go hard on immigration, I really think that's where you're going to see some of his supporters get very, very angry very quickly.
The New York Times clearly did the right thing in insisting their meeting was on the record. TV executives, got a flea in their ear, as we say, because theirs was off the record. Again, Trump really trying to manipulate the media, trying to really impose, some might say, bully.
I think you're right. I mean, I think bully is a great word. I mean, and this is what Donald Trump is. He is a bully. He also learned that the media, at least the TV media, will essentially give him what he wants. He was covered wall to wall throughout the primary campaign with very little in the way of what we might call critical analysis. Anytime he had something to say, the cable TV media allowed him to speak essentially uninterrupted. During the campaign, you did see some more critical coverage, but arguably that only worked in his favor because at that point he could connect the critical coverage to the fact that he would say the media is supporting the liberal candidate, which was harder for him to do during the Republican nomination process because the other candidates he was running against were arguably as conservative or more so, depending on the policy, than he was. Look, this is a person who's been in the media for 30 years or more, and he knows how to use it. He knows how to play the game. He can be a bully when he wants to. He can be a soft talker, a sweet talker when he wants to. And I think he's got most of the media, perhaps with the New York Times as an exception, wrapped around his little finger.
Ian Reifowitz, I hope we don't fit into that category. I'm pretty sure we don't, but thank you very much for joining us. Ian Reifowitz of the Historical Studies Department. He's the professor there at the University of New York. Pleasure to have you on board as ever.